We are living during the most extraordinary time ever. We are living in a time of greater prosperity on earth than any time in human history, and it's accelerating.
There's so much beauty in every little leaf, tree, flower, animal around us. This world is vibrant with life.
Every snowflake, every leaf, every human being is a unique expression of the infinite.
Because the choices you and I make will impact the future of life for the next 1,000 years.
We have the resources, technology, and know-how to make this world work for 100%.
I am not me, not my identity. I am more, much more. I can see how being me is not the whole story. Have you ever had that feeling? I am not the things that define me. I am not my age. I am not my gender. I am not my successes or my failures. Not my hair, my eye color, my skin color, my race, my body, my body. I am not right. I am not left. I am not my tie. I am not my prayer beads. I am not my degree. I am not my traditions or my history, not the things I've done in the past. I am not any of the labels the world puts on me. I have these things, but I am not these things. I am more than that. And I will not be held back from the dream that calls me. I dream of us together. Not just you and me or us and them. I mean, all of us. We. Yes, I am we, because we are all genders, all races, all beliefs and traditions. We are young and old, past and gone and yet to be born. We are all of it together. Stand with me for a moment and look out at humanity. Do we have a future story to tell? I say yes. Yes. Oh, hell yes. Do I know how to get there? Like a roadmap? No. No, no. But I do know that we have to reinvent this world. So don't sit back in your chair. This isn't that kind of movie. This isn't any kind of movie. This is a congress of people asking the questions. How do we reinvent new systems to run a new world that is calling to us all in the moment we begin to rise? So lean forward and let's take this journey together. We aren't born with a goal, a plan for success, a step-by-step guide, a how-to manual. No, we have to learn to play the game, learn to play, and then learn to check the score to see if we have won.
My parents came from old world Europe, from Greece, and for them success was having a career, getting a great education, helping people. Being a physician for my mom and my dad, for myself, my sister, was like, if you achieve that, that would be success.
My family's Italian-American. My mom actually grew up in poverty. My parents just have a high school education. And it was always about, well, if you want something, you have to work for it and then you can get it.
Because I was raised by a bunch of idealistic hippies, but I also grew up in one of the wealthiest towns in the United States, but I was on food stamps and welfare.
I grew up in a conventional type family. My dad was a good provider, and my mom was really happy.
My mom was an African-American independent businesswoman. She owned her own store. And my father had been dean of Howard University's law school.
My parents were married for 70 years. My dad was just a very happy man, a very simple man. He really got a lot of enjoyment out of chopping wood and carrying water.
We grew up watching my mom work so hard. Her model of success that we modeled was generosity and service and, doing whatever it takes for the people you love and what you care about.
We were refugees from communist Poland. If you look at a lot of immigrants, because they had to escape war-torn environments or unsafe environments or extreme poverty, they come in with this extreme desire for success, even greater than just they go in for the big American dream.
I'm one of 3 girls. My mother's from Japan, my dad's from India. Monday through Friday I had French school. Saturday I went to Japanese school. Sunday I went to Hindi school. So my parents actually tricked us into going to school 7 days a week.
Success early on was really a topic that there was no other option. It was more so, what are you gonna do to make us proud one day? What are you gonna do to impact the world?
I inherited a success model from my father. He was a totally competitive businessman. It was not about anything to do except winning.
My parents were always very concerned about the state of the world. They both were hardcore activists. My mom used to be. She's Argentinian, so she grew up in a dictatorship. She'd get blindfolded and go to guerrilla meetings. Same with my father's side. As an activist in Spain with the dictatorship there, spent 6 months in solitary confinement being tortured.
I was born during the Great Depression of the 30s. And then as a little kid, when I was 5 years old, the Second World War broke out. So it was always, things were rationed, it was lacking limitation. That was the world we grew up in.
My dad was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, my aunt was a nurse. So I kind of grew up around a lot of people who their vocation was helping people.
The challenge was, as I was growing up, something else was going on. It was the Apollo program. It was this dream of opening up the space frontier, and that dream captured my heart and my soul. And so I ended up sort of doing the medicine thing to make my parents happy and pursuing the space vision, if you would, to make my own soul happy.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
My dad was a small business owner, and there were so many weekends where our entire family would go into his printing shop because there was a big job that had to get done. And the whole family would work the entire weekend, and we'd turn it into a party. I mean, we'd order pizzas, and my mom would play music. But there was always this embracing of work. It wasn't like work was something bad. Work was actually something good. It was a way to take care of your family. It was a way that you express yourself.
We came here on my dad's Fulbright from Spain. And so I ended up living here with my mom illegally for 8 years. We were very, very poor. I remember talking to my mom, like, I'm gonna be rich when I grow up. And she's like, well, you don't know that. And like, I was like, no, I'm gonna make a lot of money and I'm gonna help my family and do good with it. And I was very clear about that from a very early age.
My life was mapped out. I was the protege of my father, going to take over his churches and be the successor, and my path was mapped out. And I think we all feel that sense of this is the path that is expected. For me, it took a lot of courage to walk away from what I thought success was, which was making my father happy, which was following the expectations of the members and going down the safe route.
Freedom, item, meet 'em, where's your freedom? This one needs a brand new freedom.
Success to me is being completely fulfilled and happy.
In few words, make successful people and successful lives. It means to follow what you really love. If you don't do what you really love, you are just wasting time.
For me, to be successful is like to express your creativity in the world.
I think success is different to different people. I think maybe it's overcoming the problems in life, you know? Life's a journey.
Success to me means when you've got an aspiration in life and you are able to work towards that to achieve it.
This is no south, east, and western. Yeah, guns close doors to the system.
I just want to get off the streets and, you know, hopefully get back into employment, because literally I'm living on nothing.
Being successful to me means being happy with your life, you know, having successful relationships with people that you love. Even now, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. I might be homeless, but at least I'm in London.
Atop the mountain of success, what will we find? The promised prize of making it? Or will we only find a false peak, no top in sight, and the prize of emptiness?
I went to university, studied engineering at the University of Illinois, which was one of the top engineering colleges. Immediately found the best people at doing engineering projects. They weren't the ones that were getting straight A's. They weren't the ones that were really following the curriculum at all. We just did whatever we wanted that was cool, that we found fun. The graphical user interface, the mosaic was built by Mark Andreessen, that he was a classmate of mine just 2 years ahead. Then I built a business, a very successful one by external standards. And I found myself not satisfied in my own life even after I had done that.
It doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't really make you happy. Socially, it makes you look great, but it really doesn't satisfy your soul.
The world tells us if you have financial success, you're going to be happy, and if you're famous, you're going to be happy. Everything bombards us with these messages. So when I had financial success, and when I became really famous, I started thinking, oh, great, my problems are over, now I'm gonna be happy. The shift that happened to me, the first part was just simply realizing and being honest with myself that fame and money and debauchery weren't making me happy. Like sometimes in the short term, you know, like if I was filled with the perfect combination of alcohol and drugs and at the perfect party, going home with the perfect person, for a minute, it made me happy. The other 23 hours and 45 minutes of the day were miserable and filled with depression and panic and self-loathing.
I was at the World Trade Center on 9/11 when it was attacked, and so the experience for me was witnessing the physicality around me, not only the destruction of these two monolithic skyscrapers, but all of the very expensive cars on Wall Street being demolished just to get rescue workers into the scene. So everything that I had thought at that moment was important suddenly was just being turned to trash in a matter of seconds. There was a moment when I was watching a Ferrari or something get turned over by an earth mover, and the alarm was going off, and there was I had the thought for a moment of like, don't do that, what are you doing? As if that was important in that moment when it wasn't. And it really forced me to start looking at well, if that's not important, then what is?
We aren't born with a goal, a plan for success, a step-by-step guide, a how-to manual. No, we have to learn to play the game, learn to play, and then learn to check the score to see if we have won.
My parents came from old world Europe, from Greece, and for them success was having a career, getting a great education, helping people. Being a physician for my mom and my dad, for myself, my sister, was like, if you achieve that, that would be success.
My family's Italian-American. My mom actually grew up in poverty. My parents just have a high school education. And it was always about, well, if you want something, you have to work for it and then you can get it.
Because I was raised by a bunch of idealistic hippies, but I also grew up in one of the wealthiest towns in the United States, but I was on food stamps and welfare.
I grew up in a conventional type family. My dad was a good provider, and my mom was really happy.
My mom was an African-American independent businesswoman. She owned her own store. And my father had been dean of Howard University's law school.
My parents were married for 70 years. My dad was just a very happy man, a very simple man. He really got a lot of enjoyment out of chopping wood and carrying water.
We grew up watching my mom work so hard. Her model of success that we modeled was generosity and service and, doing whatever it takes for the people you love and what you care about.
We were refugees from communist Poland. If you look at a lot of immigrants, because they had to escape war-torn environments or unsafe environments or extreme poverty, they come in with this extreme desire for success, even greater than just they go in for the big American dream.
I'm one of 3 girls. My mother's from Japan, my dad's from India. Monday through Friday I had French school. Saturday I went to Japanese school. Sunday I went to Hindi school. So my parents actually tricked us into going to school 7 days a week.
Success early on was really a topic that there was no other option. It was more so, what are you gonna do to make us proud one day? What are you gonna do to impact the world?
I inherited a success model from my father. He was a totally competitive businessman. It was not about anything to do except winning.
My parents were always very concerned about the state of the world. They both were hardcore activists. My mom used to be, she's Argentinian, so she grew up in a dictatorship. She'd get blindfolded and go to guerrilla meetings. Same with my father's side. As an activist in Spain with the dictatorship there, spent 6 months in solitary confinement being tortured.
I was born during the Great Depression of the 30s. And then as a little kid, when I was 5 years old, the Second World War broke out. So it was always, things were rationed, it was lacking limitation. That was the world we grew up in.
My dad was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, my aunt was a nurse. So I kind of grew up around a lot of people who their vocation was helping people.
The challenge was, as I was growing up, something else was going on. It was the Apollo program. It was this dream of opening up the space frontier, and that dream captured my heart and my soul. And so I ended up sort of doing the medicine thing to make my parents happy and pursuing the space vision, if you would, to make my own soul happy.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
My dad was a small business owner, and there were so many weekends where our entire family would go into his printing shop because there was a big job that had to get done. And the whole family would work the entire weekend, and we'd turn it into a party. I mean, we'd order pizzas, and my mom would play music. There was always this embracing of work. It wasn't like work was something bad. Work was actually something good. It was a way to take care of your family. It was a way that you express yourself.
We came here on my dad's Fulbright from Spain. And so I ended up living here with my mom illegally for 8 years. We were very, very poor. I remember talking to my mom, like, I'm gonna be rich when I grow up. And she's like, well, you don't know that. And like, I was like, no, I'm gonna make a lot of money and I'm gonna help my family and do good with it. And I was very clear about that from a very early age.
My life was mapped out. I was the protege of my father, going to take over his churches and be the successor, and my path was mapped out. And I think we all feel that sense of this is the path that is expected. For me, it took a lot of courage to
ended up going to Berkeley, UC Berkeley as an undergraduate, and studied music and molecular biology because I was hedging. I'm like, I want to be a rock star so bad, but I knew that I just didn't have that amount of talent to be able to pull that off, or the drive to do that. And I loved science and I loved people, and I thought, well, okay, the next thing I knew, I'm in medical school. I'd gone into medicine with all the best intentions. I'd checked all the boxes, I'd followed all the rules, and now when I got to my destination, what was supposed to be a fulfilling career of service to others, when I looked in the mirror, what I saw instead was a burned out, disconnected zombie with a stethoscope. My dad was ecstatic because he would tell everybody back in India, you know, Zubin is the Stanford doctor, and he is, you know, making a lot of money, living on the hill, and his wife is a radiologist, and, you know, it's everything we wanted. Whereas I was thinking, whose life am I living?
My first job out of college was on Wall Street on the New York Stock Exchange. In my heart, I knew this wasn't my path. While everyone around me financially was incredibly successful, spiritually, they were bankrupt.
I was in my early, mid-20s, making lots of money, spending lots of money, traveling, partying. I was a trader for a hedge fund. I was on the trading floor screaming and yelling, doing that every single day. You got a report that says whether you won or lost that day. Boston College did a study of high net worth individuals, and you needed to have $25 million to be in the study, and the average person had $75 million. And one question they asked is, do you feel financially secure? And nearly all of them said no.
I ended up traveling the world for 2 years with Def Jam, with a major artist at the time, and I was opening for them and doing all these incredible things. And at the time, it was super fun and it was super amazing, and I was getting to see the world. And we were in Cape Town, and we were literally doing the same thing we always did, which we'd go play a show, we'd go to a nightclub, we'd go spend all this money on champagne, we'd go back on the tour bus and do it all again. And I signed the bill at this club. We spent $3,000 in 20 minutes at this club on champagne. And we come out and everyone's getting in the tour bus, and I remember this so clearly. It was like two worlds. The tour bus, the glamour, glitz, rock star, money, all this amazing stuff, and the real world that was facing me. There was a shanty town right there, right across the way. And it just hit me. I felt like I was taking. I felt like I was living somebody else's life. I felt like a fraud.
You may gain the world, you may gain stuff, but inside, your soul may be hollow. There may not be a certain level of peace, love, kindness, compassion, all the things that may make life really meaningful. So it's not really successful. We've just used the law of manifestation to get things, to acquire, and we're left bereft.
At the end of the day, when we think about success, it has to be tied directly to what are our society's goals. And success usually as an individual means I'm a participant, I have accumulated wealth. Failure and success are two sides of the same, I think, failed currency, which is that it's all about money.
Matter of fact, if you're still in the old model, it's kind of aberrant. You know, you're just trying to make money? That's it? You're not cleaning up anything? You're not helping? You're not helping a school system? You're not buying computers for anybody? What? This is it? I'll talk to you later, man.
The world is calling for us to emerge a new model, and that's what's happening. That's social entrepreneurship. People are going, okay, well, I can make money, but I could also make an impact. Well, if I can have both, why wouldn't I do that? And it just makes sense.
With new time, new reality there. So we have to accept the new reality. Facing new reality, but our perception is old thinking. Then, you see, I think a lot of problem, unnecessary problem, you see, happen. So we must act according to new reality.
Any model of success that externalizes harm to any other part of this biosphere is not a viable model of success for any of us. So if it's not a model of success for everybody and for all aspects of life, then it's not a meaningful model of success. Success has to be omniconsiderate to matter.
The model has shifted from merely profit to actually coming to a realization that we're connected holographically to a whole system here on the planet. And so redefining what success really is changes the whole conversation, which changes our perception, which changes our action, which changes our world. The conversation around success is extremely important to change the world for the better.
If success is a mountain with no top, what then? Are we cast adrift? No. It's clear we each carry unique gifts for the world. Where are they most needed? Let that be your guide.
Exercising your gifts in a way that is in service, then you feel like it's the feeling of, this is what I'm here to do. It could be something very visible and very grand. It could also be something that no one will ever know about. But in the moment, you can feel, yeah, this is what's mine to do.
My purpose is to teach, is to facilitate space, to be a conduit, to be a part of an evolutionary experience. And when I'm in that place of purpose, I love, I feel it.
So many people struggle with what's the purpose of my life, and I think the easiest way to discover it is to find what you're most passionate about. There's a direct connection between passion and purpose. When there's something that's so deep inside of you that needs to be expressed, that you have to find a way, and there's enough hunger and drive that is, I'd say, consistent enough and powerful enough to push through any obstacle you can imagine, that's pure passion, and I think you can't separate the two. Most people, if they find what they're most passionate about, they can find their purpose. The problem is, many of us think our purpose has to be this giant thing, change the entire earth simultaneously, all humans are happy because of me tomorrow, and so it gets a little overwhelming. Sometimes the purpose is something really just simple and beautiful, like raising your children to really be totally alive and feel the love and joy that they deserve to have every single day, and for you to do the same.
People ask me all the time, what can I do? And I always say, do what you can. Whether you are a hairdresser, or whether you're a Wall Street business person, or whether you are a communicator or an artist or an activist in some way, there's ways that we can all contribute to the greater good. So do what you can.
When you're really joyful and happy, you're on the right path. You meet the right people at the right time. Love is reciprocated to you. It's not that you don't have any challenges or problems, but you flow through those as well.
You only know that you're really supposed to do something if you can't not do it. Someone says, well, how do I know if I'm a dancer? Well, if you can't not dance, then you know you're a dancer.
Give yourself free range. Decide what aspect of humanity you want to elevate, what aspect of the world you want to shift, and then allow yourself to play in that area and be whatever you need to be at that time in that area.
Find your passion, your purpose in life, and pursue that independent of what your mom, your dad, your teacher, your friend, anyone else said. Tapping into that passion taps a nuclear power source that allows you to overcome all hardships, allows you to keep going when everyone else gives up.
What is this rough beast? Its hour come at last. What is the price we pay for our fears unfaced? I know we can find the courage to remember that we cannot fool ourselves into living the lie that we don't matter. You are here for something magnificent, something of beautiful service. Success is a mountain with no top. What then? Are we cast adrift? No. It's clear we each carry unique gifts for the world. Where are they most needed? Let that be your guide.
I started working on music quasi-professionally when I was around 14 years old. You know, starting bands, playing concerts, writing songs, thinking about making albums and singles. But it was never, ever once with the idea of having a lucrative career from it. Like I would spend my entire life in obscurity, making music in my bedroom that no one would pay attention to. I would live penniless and die penniless, but be happy that I was able to spend my life working on music.
I used to talk to my cousin, who was my best friend, and we used to have these meetups where we'd go outside and we'd go in the woods, and I'd say, you know, I'm meant for something big. I want to help people. I want to give back. I want to serve. And I was like 8.
I definitely have great hopes for the future, that definitely there's a lot more equality for men and women, boys and girls, blacks and whites. Well, if you see something that's like wrong in the world and you think you can like do something about it, which in most cases you can, then do something about it.
I do believe that we're all here for a reason. You know, each and every one of us is on this planet for a reason, and I believe that whether we choose to acknowledge it, each and every one of us has a part to play in building the future we will leave to the next generation.
Our gifts are something that we naturally do, easily and effortlessly. I feel like we will never be truly happy or live an abundant, joyous life until we are living in alignment with that gift that we've been given.
When I'm giving my gift, in that deepest moment, it doesn't feel like it's my gift. You know, in the deepest sense, what it feels like for me is it's the impulse of life that is actually expressing itself through me as this form. It's more of an opening to being used by life. It's an opening to being lived and breathed and gifted through.
You are here to give something to the world. You are like all beings, even in an ecosystem. Every being isn't just trying to survive and reproduce, but it's also expressing its gift. It wants to. Why do birds sing so much? Do they really have to sing that much just to mark their territory and attract a mate? Or are they exuberantly pouring forth their song? And don't you want to do that too?
The thing is, there's something about us that is powerful. Something about us that's unique. Something about us that's unrepeatable. And we have to set it free.
I was taking a required class, and it was a philosophy class, and I was reading a book, and it was an assigned text, and I really didn't like it. One night, when I was at home studying, I stood up and I threw the book on the ground and said, I'm not going to read this book anymore. I said, this is my life. Life is short. I'm going to live it the way I want to live it. And I really stopped doing things that I didn't really want to do, that I didn't have any passion about, that wasn't things I cared about. That led me to eventually start a natural food store.
I was at Google, I was inventing Google Glass, I was working on the self-driving cars. I was had the product experience for the entire division and helped to kind of create the division. Part of like doing this process of setting these goals, hitting these goals, setting these goals, hitting these goals, being incredibly good at doing this stuff is I was actually little by little internalizing a lot of stress. And as I kind of rose up the ranks and became more of an executive, helping to run a multi-billion-dollar business in 44 countries, so it's a good amount of work. And kind of in that process, like my body just kind of gave up. Like I had a major rupture in my lower GI tract. I lost 40% of my blood in about 30 minutes. When I got to the emergency room, like because it was internal bleeding, they didn't know what was going on. But within a minute or two, they figured it out, and they had to give me 4 simultaneous blood transfusions so I would not die right there. The bleeding didn't stop right away from getting the blood transfusions, so I had to get 4 more in order before I stabilized. And the nurse informed me later that I was basically about a minute, maybe 2 minutes away from irreversible brain and organ damage. And I could actually feel myself dying too. I could feel my extremities going cold. I could feel everything drawing in, trying to protect the heart and the lungs. The next day when I woke up, a couple different things. I had 8 blood transfusions. A human being is mostly liquid, and most of that liquid is blood. And I realized that morning that I was, number one, only alive because of the generosity of 8 people that I will never meet and never be able to repay. And number 2, that I was mostly other people that morning. So something like that begins to change your perspective. I quit Google, traveled the world, worked with 3 dozen social entrepreneurs on things like access to clean water, micronutrients, basic health care, solar electrification. The thing is that I wanted to get a front row seat to how to go solve these problems.
As we wake up to our uniqueness and that becomes the central focus of our attention, we know that we fit and we know where we fit. Our gift saves us and our gift pulls us to the right place, the right people, so that the world is made new where we are.
When you're
suffering and poverty early on, a lot of insecurity and self-doubt, and most of us are fundamentally afraid and insecure at very deep levels in different ways. Either those fears really end up limiting the full expression of our potential, or they end up being a vehicle for us to develop into a greater expression that also liberates other people. You know, when we really move through our fear and we really meet it, it sets other people free.
When I was in 4th grade, my favorite day of the year was Halloween, because it was the one day of the year that everybody got dressed up and I got to finally blend in. And I was in my Halloween costume and I was rolling around on the floor, and I caught my left leg on the door and I bent it back and I snapped it at the femur. And I knew what that meant. That meant I was not going to get to go to school on the one day of the year that I loved most. And I was so angry. And my mom asked me a pivotal question. She said, "Is this going to be a gift or a burden, your disability, your condition?" And it was like this cosmic moment where I got clarity on my life in 4th grade, that I still loved my life, even though I had to go through all that pain. And that maybe the purpose to why I was in this container was to teach other people how to love their life amidst their fractures. Because everybody fractures. They fracture in their marriage, they fracture in their finances. Pain finds all of us.
I'll never forget having to make that choice. I can take the safe path, or I can follow the path of my soul. And most of the time I knew, as a young man, I knew this was the path. I knew this was not the path, but one path was completely unknown and scary. It takes true courage of the soul to follow that knowing, even though we don't know where it's going to lead us.
We have to wake up to who we truly are. We have to grow up by dealing with all the blocks that live inside of us that might stop us from bringing that forward. So we have to get out of our fear and our limiting beliefs and our self-judgments and all of that. And then we have to show up in expressing that in the world.
I had reached sort of the
the depths of a sort of a personal crisis. I looked in the mirror, I hated what I saw. This wasn't me. And the idea of doing this for another 20 years in this broken system where I was putting patients on a treadmill and living somebody else's life, it was horrifying. So what happened was the way that I sort of tried to find a release from this was I realized that, wow, you know, in the old days, in order to reach people with music or comedy or ideas, you had to have a tremendous amount of talent. In the YouTube era, you did not.
Z-Dog MD, board certified to be the #1 doctor on the mic. You won't see another MD like me, an OG who nearly OD'd on med school. It's Dr. Z.
Our first few videos were really, really stupid, and yet I had this sort of weird outpouring of love from first the medical community, because some of those videos were about sort of medical pain and how difficult it is to do our jobs. And then we did one called Manhood in the Mirror.
I'm checking out my nads in the mirror. I'll feel my junk for lumps and stuff.
Student health clinics were calling me and saying, you know, we actually play this on repeat in our waiting room, and kids are looking at it going, that's really dumb. And then they're going home and checking their testicles for cancer, and they're actually finding lumps. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, so me in my bathrobe with a camera doing what I'm crazy about, which is making parody songs and trying to educate, was actually affecting people's lives across the country in a way that I felt disempowered to do in my regular job with my 10 years of training and all the student loans and everything. And that's where it really kind of clicked. This is a thing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. All the medical training, all the guitar training, all the sort of growing up trying to figure out how to be funny to make myself comfortable in these situations, it was all coming to a head where this was my story and my contribution, a way that I could actually do something with who I am that actually helped people. Something with who I am that actually helped people.
Where do I end and you begin? Why am I me and not you? Strange. Maybe my idea is inside out. There is no place where I end and you begin. Maybe we are the space that binds us together.
We are living in a perpetually more toxic environment, and that degrades quality of life drastically, especially for the lower 2 billion who have no way of protecting themselves against it. We all breathe the same air, we all drink the same water, so how much money we have is not ultimately going to protect us. We can't drink the money, we can't eat it, and we can't breathe it.
The vision of success that we have been using is not just a little bit in need of tweaking. It needs to be thrown out and replaced. What brought us to this point is unsustainable going forward. If we don't do something, there's a question about whether the species may survive. Most of the models that have gotten enough consensus to be published are very conservative models.
People all over the world, their home is either already gone, the only thing on their mind is how to feed their children that day or to feed themselves. They don't have the luxury to think about climate change. Like, we're already out of time when it comes to standing up for, fighting for the climate, the world, the environment. Like, we don't have time to wait till we grow up to make a difference.
For most people, I think it's like, it's a million miles away, it's incredibly foreign. These are people with flies in their eyes, these are people that farm. Like, it's not anything like the world that most people know. But for me, my parents actually grew up in rural Taiwan. So like when I see that, that's basically my parents one generation ago. For that generation that's in the developing world right now, who's out there? Who's gonna do something?
Contribution is what we're made for. We're made to grow and we're made to give. Everything we get is wonderful, but no matter what you get, the joy, the excitement, the energy of that only lasts so long. But when you do something that's larger than yourself, then your life has meaning. And that's what contribution's all about. That's what it means to truly give.
On this little fragile organic spaceship inside of a very thin atmosphere that's actually supported by the life on the planet, everything is interconnected within that system, right? Everything's interconnected within that spaceship, and there is no place on there called away that doesn't affect the rest of it. It doesn't matter which nation is polluting the ocean, because there are no boundaries in the ocean that are meaningful. It doesn't matter where pollution to the air comes. It doesn't matter where species extinction comes from. These are all global issues. Our technology has globalized us in such a way that we don't have local issues anymore.
Sure, everybody knows by now that the ocean is in deep trouble. Whether you look at marine pollution, or declining fish stocks, or degraded coastal ecosystems, or ocean acidification, or lack of ocean governance out on the high seas, in all these fields, it's human activity that has put the ocean into deep trouble. But it's absolutely unacceptable that there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish by the year 2050.
Now we're at this moment where it's got to turn into implementation, actions in different countries across different regions. And so if we're looking at a new era, then we should be starting with young people, with innovation, innovators, entrepreneurs, and connecting them to economies, to people, and of course to the ocean. I mean, the ocean is just a massive economy that can work for both people and planet.
As I truly believe that the ocean is everybody's business. Whatever industry we work in, we must not only minimize the negative impacts of our actions on the oceans, but also we must take positive steps, strong partnerships to help heal it. The days of exploiting first and considering the consequences later must well and truly end.
And know with every fiber in my being that you and I have the ability, the tenacity, we have the resiliency, we have the faith, we have the understanding, we have the ability to rise above any circumstance that's in front of us. And when we do it as individuals, and then we hold hands and do it collectively, we truly are unstoppable.
What can we create if we not only step into this ourselves, but if we come together and have conversations that are meaningful, that are innovative, and that challenge the status quo?
It's one thing to wake up and to realize, like, wow, here's why I'm here, and I'm gonna share this with the world, and I'm gonna shine my light out into the world. But it's another thing to find other people who are shining their light and go, oh, you too? I think we're finally waking up to that truth. It's like a universal law that's always been in play, but we've just kind of been ignoring it for a long time. And now these younger generations are waking up to the fact that collaboration is where it's at, where unity and coming together is the thing that's going to solve the issues of the world. The best part about collaboration, and this is what I love the most about it, is that it's not about us, it's about the message. It's about what we're here to do. And if we're here to serve something greater than ourselves, then it doesn't matter if I partner up with 400 people, I'm here for the mission.
We need to prioritize the we over the me. And that's really exciting because it's bringing in a new era of unleashing our collective potential rather than focusing on just unleashing our individual potential.
Recently, world leaders have come together and agreed on a set of global goals. And as UNDP Ocean Advocate, Where I'm focusing on is that, without healthy oceans, we aren't able to ensure the end of poverty, ensuring global prosperity.
The Sustainable Development Goals offer a framework for not only humanity but also businesses to look at how they're doing business. My favorite goal is 17, partnership for the goals. If you look at how the United Nations came into existence after World War II, the countries realized we really need to look at things together and aim for a higher ideal. And so with goal number 17, partnerships for the goals, it's really seeking out that oneness, that recognition we're a world family, we're in this together.
As you awaken, as you become more aligned with your purpose, you notice that you want to bring more people into the picture, because as wonderful as it is to be aligned in your own purpose, it's even better when you lock arms with people and you create this universal effort of people rising up together.
When you're in your genius and you surround yourself with people and their flow and their genius, it feels like this.
The reason why it's a new world is because we're doing it together, and there is an intention for all of us and a purpose and a mission for all of us that is above that of our own success. And that is, what is the world gonna look like when we're done and we're gone? It's so obvious to us now what we need to do. It's be in your own successes, but come together and realize that unless we all have it, none of us have it.
What is a success that is for you and not me? Or me and not you? It is a fractured success at best, a stained perch, where fear of being the next one to fall is a constant companion.
The first time I went to India, I was 11 years old, and I was able to see like true poverty for the first time. And I'll never forget the moment where I was in a train station in India, and there was this kid who had like elephantitis on his feet, and he was like by himself, and he was like dragging his feet, like begging for money for food. And I remember and I was like, I asked my parents, like, where's his parents? And he didn't have any parents. He was like just a kid by himself with elephantitis on his feet, just abandoned, begging for food by himself. And I was just like, I remember I was like, what? I don't know how would I live without like someone taking care of me? Like, how lucky are we? And that was a moment. I don't know, I'm crying. That could have been me. Like, that could have been me. And, my dad came to this country from India with $5 in his pocket. That could have been me. I was in South Africa in 2009, and I remember just, walking around and meeting a group of girls, and just one particular girl, and I was like, why aren't you in school? And what she said to me like completely changed my life. She said, it's my week of shame. And I was like, your week of shame? What are you talking about? And she said, well, when I have my period, I stay at home. And I said, when you have your period, you stay at home. What are you talking about? And she said, well, I tried using old rags and old bits of mattresses and leaves and mud and whatever I can find, and none of it worked. So eventually I just stopped going to school. And because the boys would laugh at me if the thing fell down, it was like a whole thing. It never crossed my mind, what were girls using to manage their periods in a developing world? Like, it just never crossed my mind. And then coming back to the US, I started researching and discovered that over 100 million girls were missing a week of school when they have their periods. And millions of those girls are dropping out of school because of something as natural as their periods. Today, like now.
My story started early on, and nobody wanted to talk then about this looming dark cloud called HIV, or that became known as AIDS. And that's because of the stigma that was associated with anybody that did. It was on everybody's mind, it wasn't on their lips. And why not connect with people in this profound moment and talk about something so significant when others wouldn't, and maybe most couldn't, and arguably shouldn't. We did a campaign. I reached out to Annie Leibovitz, who was an iconic photographer at the time in our industry, and Annie shot a campaign. So the campaign ran. It was a transformative moment for me personally. I felt that all of a sudden everything we were doing seemed more important. That ad ran, and it set us out on a path, and we never looked back.
We cannot outrun our shadow. We must face the facts that what brought us here will not bring us further. We must rebuild our society while it is still in flight.
So it's obvious we're in a moment of time where we have systemic problems, where if you try to solve just one problem, you recognize it's interconnected with most of the other ones. And so how do you actually shift the system? I think that starts with defining the problem. I think part of that core problem is the reality that we're in a game design that's rivalrous, that's win-lose, which reinforces the belief that we're separate from each other.
Rivalrous game theory means that there is some in-group called a company or a country or a race or whatever the identity of an in-group is that is competing against some out-group for some finite win. An anti-rivalrous game means that we create a game where our win not only doesn't require their loss or a harm to the commons, but our win necessarily benefits them and vice versa. We've actually coupled our well-beings. And this is not communism. Communism failed at this. It's not socialism. It's also not capitalism. It's not democracy. It's actually not any of the systems for collective sense-making and choice-making we have ever had. Rivalrous games, win-lose games, multiplied by exponential technology, self-terminate. Because exponential destructive capacity, finite playing field, self-terminates. We can't put exponential tech back in the bag, so we have to create anti-rivalrous games.
And the question is, well, how do we do that, right? And the reality is, it's not that easy. We're actually talking about an upgrade, not just in how we design organizations, but we also have to upgrade the players. You can change the game, but without a change in the players' development, they'll keep playing the old game, right? And so it's an invitation to not just work on systems and structures, but also work on the human level. And who do we need to be to live in a world that is truly omni-considerate or win-win in design, where when we're gonna take an action that we actually consider how that action impacts all life.
The old world understanding of evolution as competition is totally off base. It's not that there isn't competition, but that the things that win by collaborating best. There's the term competitive advantage. I prefer the term collaborative advantage. If you have a bunch of things, and one of them figures out a way to transform some resources in a way that benefits something else, and that something else transforms the resources or the local terrain or whatever, it makes some change in the world in a way that makes it more likely for this one to survive. You've got A and B. The more A does this stuff, it makes life better for B, and the more B does this stuff, it makes life better for A. Well, that pattern has this sort of acceleration to it. It naturally accelerates. And what that means is through just lots of interaction, The only patterns that persist are patterns of collaboration.
We know everything that we need to do to solve the worst of the crises facing us. In an ecosystem, every bit has a part. Systems that work are in right relationship with the whole, with the parts.
So we have to learn how to create complex rather than complicated civilizations. We have to create a civilization that is fully closed loop, meaning that we have atomic accounting. All of the new stuff is made from old stuff. We don't have net depletion or net accumulation toxicity anywhere. We can use new photons, because those are coming in all the time, but not new atoms, right? So atomic cycling, new energy input, and basically unlimited information or pattern.
We have the resources at our fingertips to solve some of the world's biggest challenges. And now it's all about, do we have the will and the focus and the intention and the commitment to make it happen?
It's extraordinary. Over the last century, over the last 100 years, the cost of food has dropped 13-fold. The cost of energy has dropped nearly 30-fold. The cost of transportation, 100-fold. Communications, thousands of fold.
200 years ago, 85% of everyone alive lived on less than $1 a day. Today, it's only 14%. That trend line's very clear. We're rapidly ending poverty on this planet. War, violence, they're on decline. If you just take a snapshot without historical context, there's horrible things that are going on this planet. And yet, there have always been horrible things going on this planet. Relatively speaking, there's a lot fewer horrible things going on right now than probably any other time in our history. There are problems, to be sure, but that's our job. Our job is to be creative and solve those problems.
Today, we have more problem solvers than any time in human history. Think back 1,000 years ago. The only people who could solve a problem on a regional or national level were the kings and the queens. And even then, the best they could do was deploy their troops or change monetary policies. 100 years ago, it was the robber barons, the industrialists, who could build the railroads, the libraries, the schools. Today, any of us who truly are driven by a passion can solve a problem, right? There's no shortage of capital. There's more angel capital, venture capital, crowdfunding capital than any time in human history. Money should not be a person's excuse. There's more access to expertise than any time. I can go and crowdsource a quantum physicist or a genetic gene jockey. What do you need? There's more technological power, right? Today, a child in the middle of Mumbai on a smartphone on Google has access to more knowledge and information than the President of the United States did 20 years ago. All of us can find a problem that we want to solve and solve it. And that, for me, gives me the greatest hope for the future ever.
Each of us, 7 billion human beings, taking care about global this global issue should be part of our life.
We can build a world where the highest quality of life that has ever been possible economically to the wealthiest person, a higher quality of life than that is possible for everyone. Through ground-up redesign of infrastructure, social structure, and the corresponding worldview, which is what this movie is about.
Giving our gifts, raising up our work for a larger purpose is only a part of the puzzle called the future of humanity. We must look out further than ever before, towards the edges of everything we have ever known.
So if we came upon some caterpillars, and we didn't know what caterpillars were, and we didn't already know the story of the chrysalis and the butterfly, and we just saw the way that they were eating everything in their ecosystem unrenewably and not pollinating, and we watched them over the course of a little while eat more and get bigger so they could eat faster, and we forecasted based on the curve that we were watching, a continuation of that curve, what we would forecast is that they eat themselves into extinction. If we looked at a chicken or bird or lizard kind of embryo developing inside of a shell, and we didn't know that its time in the shell was finite. We would see that it was consuming scarce resource, right, the white that was in there, and it was polluting in its space without really a clear plan of what was going to happen next. All of these are fetal, larval, developmental time periods, and the developmental time period is characterized by net growth and consumption in a fundamentally unsustainable way, because it's not supposed to be sustainable, to get to the point where it can go through a discrete phase shift. So when we look at the civilization model that has been defined by net growth and consumption, by ever-evolving rivalrous games that has driven technology and innovation up to this point, that particular type of system we can think of as a developmental phase of humanity, and it can't continue. We both have to shift into a fundamentally different kind of system, but we also can, because those new systems require capacities that we didn't have. And so when we look at all of the things that are no longer evolutionarily viable, they also were evolutionarily necessary to get us to the capacities that can go through a discrete, nonlinear phase shift into a fundamentally different mode of being.
So it's not at all about bashing an old system or spending our time and energy on proving why it doesn't work. It's not about that. It's just about the evolution. So it's really just about saying thank you to the old paradigm, saying thank you to the old system. You brought us here. You taught us so much about everything, but you taught us really about how we need to do things differently. So with gratitude, we are changing the game.
When a system is at a point of crisis, it can't stabilize by going back. So what's happening in the dysfunctionality is innovation, creativity, newness in every field.
When we think about designing the future, when we think about being able to restructure civilization radically with robotics and technological automation, denecessitating labor force and jobs and economics as we've thought about it, it's scary for a lot of people to say, if we can change things that significantly, how should we change it? What should we change it to? What is actually a definition of a desirable future? And how are we deciding that? Who's deciding it? How are we deciding it? So what is a successful civilization? Is it GDP per capita, right? Is it? Obviously not. What is it? That fundamentally comes to the question of what is meaningful, right? What is a meaningful human life? What is meaningful collective human life, which is civilization? Then we get to ask, what am I called to do in the emergence of that new world?
So much of what's coming out of the current leadership system is tweaking the model, when what we really need to do is moonshots. We need to completely rethink the system. We need to experiment because we don't know what's going to work.
The choices you and I make will impact the future of life for the next 1,000 years. Rather than that being a burden for our time, it ennobles our lives. It gives us the opportunity to live the most meaningful lives any generation of humankind has ever lived.
I often wonder why I am. What is this whisperer calling me to truth and beauty? See it touch the world, leaving swirls of consciousness like a painting come to life by its own hand.
For billions of years, nature has been evolving. And there were 5 mass extinctions before we got here. There are billions of species extinct before we got here. But nonetheless, the process kept moving to higher order, more complexity, more intelligence.
The universe is winding up. It is not winding down. So that overall force, a lot of philosophers have called it eros. A lot of Christian theologians call it love. The scientific types call it self-organization. Whichever one you want. It points to the universe winding up. Overall, this force seems undeniable, and it's driving the universe towards these higher, more integral, more inclusive, more loving stages of development.
Everything's rising up. It has to. That's the way the law works. Go take a look in your garden. That's the way it works. Look at all of nature. It's perfect.
We're the first generation to be conscious of evolution, to be conscious we're affecting our own evolution. The amazing thing is that only recently did we discover cosmogenesis. We thought the universe was static or eternal. And when these scientists saw the background radiation of that first flaring forth and could identify it as the beginning of this existing universe, our sequence is a continual rise of complexity and consciousness from single cell to multicell to animal to the early humans, always in the direction of greater complexity and greater consciousness. And now that that process has become self-aware, it has been, is now evolving, and we are part of the evolution.
As we become more conscious, as we begin to take responsibility for our own evolution, it's not completely happening outside us any longer through ecological variances and ecological pressures, but we begin to take responsibility. We begin to consciously evolve. And once you become aware of that, you're in a position to accelerate your own evolution and also the evolution of other people. And then as the critical mass become conscious of it, it begins to, again, elevate and lift up.
When you're tapping into the impulse of creation itself, you can trust yourself. You don't doubt. You don't analyze. You don't see if it's right or wrong, but you get a feeling of flow. The possibility of radical connectivity of innovations, creativity, and people's heart's desire to do their work, to be creative, to express their unique potential, is the force that's going to evolve the universe.
When you realize that you are affected by the whole and you affect the whole, then utilizing your life in service of the evolution of the whole towards the highest vision of that you can hold, and continuously having that be the context for your personal development, your personal power, and your sense of belonging and engagement, and your sense of self-transcendence beyond individual self. One of the core problems, if you want a self-organizing system, is that every agent has to self-organize, has to take responsibility for their own life and their impact on the whole, and then realize that they are in relationship with the other agents in that environment and seek to understand how to have meaningful relationships with them, take responsibility for having meaningful relationships, recognize that their life is better when other people self-actualize also and help create a better world, and say, how can I help others self-actualize and partner with them? Figuring out how to do that, self-assessing, learning, figuring out how to do that, that's a big part of growing up, moving from child consciousness to, a really mature consciousness. And it is fundamental to what self-organizing universe means and to what the next phase of civilization needs. So when you ask, how can I help in the evolution of humanity, life on Earth, civilization, it's a great question, and nobody's going to give you the answer.
Everybody says that this world can't go on as it has been going on. They say our systems are failing us, the economy, healthcare, government, and that we are ruining the planet around us one tree at a time. They say we're not safe to walk around our town and our schools, on our streets. And when I look around, it seems true. Unless it isn't. You see, a caterpillar spends its whole life in a frenetic drive to consume as many leaves as it can, never stopping. But then one day the caterpillar does stop. On the inside, all of its systems start to fail. And slowly the cocoon hardens, the caterpillar disintegrates into an amino acid soup. And that caterpillar is no more. In that moment, cells that had been dormant in the caterpillar begin to rise up. At first as independent single-cell organisms, then they come together clustering in a community, and they imagine their way out of the wreckage of the caterpillar, and they build a butterfly. Yeah, you can see where this is going. But let's stop for a moment and ask ourselves, what would become of the caterpillar if those independent imaginal cells never came together? That's right, no butterfly. So if our systems are failing us and disintegrating to the ground, who are the imaginal cells amongst us, those brightly burning independent people? From where I stand, it's you. And you and you and you and us, every one of us. And all we have to do is come together, bring our brilliance together, not to get something or push some agenda, but to come together as one. I believe that this is the time for us to rise together, to embrace. This is the time for us to rise together, to embrace one another and make the leap from me to we. Yeah, I like the sound of that. We together. We rise up. We rise up for love. We rise up for each other. We rise up so that no one is left behind. We rise up for the future of our planet. We rise up for equality, for justice in our streets, for men and women, young and old, no matter what shape, size, color, or race. We rise up for you and for me and for us together. We rise up together because if we stay separated, isolated, then our brilliant lights will fade and no butterfly will emerge from the cocoon. So how will your voice contribute to the song of the universe? Universe, our one song. This is our time to come together and bravely step into the future where we rise up, lift off, and soar.
And we'll rise up, like the waves will rise up, in spite of the ache, we'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
I rise up for the future.
I rise up to discover new vistas, new possibilities.
I rise up to bullies and mean people.
I rise up for people finding out their passion
figuring out what that is, and then absolutely going for it.
We're rising up for happiness.
I rise up for peace and for everybody to have a home, water, and food.
I rise up so all people can share their unique voice.
We all want to be loved. We are all love, and that we can love ourselves and we can love one another.
Everyone should have the opportunity to be a part of a movement, because movements are what shift the planet. Movements are what opens up doorways for generations to come. This movement is critical. This movement is necessary. This movement is timely, and this movement needs you.
I rise up to stand in solidarity with other women who have cancer.
I'm rising up to support my good friend who has breast cancer.
My generation is rising up for the future of humanity.
People, earth, and spirit.
I rise up for love.
For the evolution of humanity.
The invitation for us all is to be pulled by something larger than yourselves, and that's what Rise Up is, rising up out of ourselves.
I rise up for children being entrepreneurs.
I'm rising up to build a bridge between the business community and the environmental community.
I'm rising up for creativity and art.
I rise up to overcome cerebral palsy.
I rise up to help my daughter battle cerebral palsy. You know, one day she was walking and she fell 25 times in a row. She kept falling, and I said, you know, sweetheart, is there anything I can do to help you? And she says, Dad, when you fall, you just got to get back up.
I'm rising up to inspire the next generation.
I rise up to make exciting adventures.
I rise up to love myself and others.
Transparency and vulnerability.
For conscious, sustainable communities.
Radically innovative thinking.
To break the cycle of abuse and addiction.
For the opportunity for the vision impaired to be fully employed.
I rise up for education.
Dünya barışı istiyorum.
For people to feel deeply fulfilled.
Rise up, to me, is taking your life to another level by just being your best you.
I rise up for the freedom to worship.
I rise up for my dreams.
I rise up for truth.
I rise up so that all young people across this country fall back in love with who they truly are.
I rise up for all living organisms.
For us to see the humanity in each other.
I invite every person who's hearing my voice and seeing this film to step forward and say, I'm part of this movement. I'm part of this movement. I'm a person who's going to be a human being beyond borders and not be divided against my brothers and sisters by anything anybody tells me to believe. We are one.
I rise up for transformation.
For connection. For people to create a life by their own design.
Rise up and be the magnificent you that you're destined to be.
But it's not out of doing what you think needs to be done. It's out of doing what makes you come alive.
It's not when something happens I'll be happy. It's when I'm happy things will happen.
We don't wait for our leaders to show up and instead become the leaders ourselves. Join us and wake up and be a part of a movement of change.
If we all kind of did this together, could you imagine what kind of world we'd live in?
When you get an idea of your uniqueness, your power, your creativity, and set it free at this time in human history, you'll be a pioneer for that which is possible for the entire human race.
This is an opportunity for you to join the movement and really help this message get out there.
The new way is here. The new world is here. It's time to rise up. It's time to do things differently. It's time to create a new normal, and it's just the most exciting thing and the most exciting time ever.
The world needs that special gift that only you have. So please join us and rise up.